Let's move on with our third speaker, Mr. Enrico from ICARDA, and he's going to talk about sand and dust storm sources mitigation. Enrico.
Good morning. Is it okay? Maybe I use this. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon, actually, everybody, and thanks. This is, I think, a wonderful day gathering around key topics that now we will see also in the work that we have done as WOCAT. I'm representing here WOCAT, and I'm reporting on behalf of our team, Claudio from the Rabat office, Renate from Bern, and myself that I'm based in Tashkent. You know, and you already heard about WOCAT this morning, but also in several sessions. What we are... Can you change the slide?
Yeah, okay. Just point there. Point in the back.
Over there. Okay.
Computers in the back.
Okay. And so basically the context that we start our study is obviously the understanding of the drivers between understanding of the drivers and impacts related to land use and land degradation, and because for us, I mean, it's as you can see from several discussions that we had today, it's quite relevant, and the overall goal is around the source mitigation. That is one of the key topics where WOCAT as a consortium is heavily involved around obviously the concept of sustainable land management, because as we all know and we agree, they have a high potential to control soil erosion. The purpose of this study that we started a few months ago and is going to be completed in the month of October were actually three. So an analysis of the knowledge that we have at Global Impact, documenting case studies, and draft a preliminary proposal on how to include SDS aspect into LDN targets. What we have used are two methods. The first one is obviously scientific evidence. So we have looked at existing scientific publication, balancing geographical and thematic coverage. But we have focused mostly on article recent, so after 2000. And what we have seen is mainly that STS is related to processes like airborne sand and dust generation and others. And there is obviously a huge number of scientific articles that are targeting diverse conditions, but not connecting fields and discipline together. The approach is actually to check if there is an STS impact, if it exists, the extent, and in the region or in the context, more specifically, where such impacts are affecting. So our goal or our process was to go through a global source area map, as you already mentioned before, and identify a target world region. In addition, we have worked on organizing information in a database that was stating explicitly impacts and sources by the authors. We have organized the database around three areas: the sources, the events, and the impact. So we spend more time around the sources in terms, obviously, on the geographical source, the land use, and the SLM practices, and the event typology and the impact, both on-site, obviously, and off-site in the impact area. The second things that we paired the methodology was to look at the news. We had before in previous presentation today seen several news articles, and what we found that there are a specific reference to catastrophic hazard in the news, but they are quite extensively reported, but but not always we see the point of view of the affected people. And complementing the two, the goal now is to work into case studies that are building this, the scientific literature and the news, integrating multiple sources. So the process is this merging of the information, exploring then the drivers of observed impact, document the SLM implemented in the source area, identify further options, and formulate a proposal on how to include the SDS aspects. What are the preliminary findings here are on Asia, and there is a strong disconnection between the impact, the source, and the cause narratives. Mainly, the article are focusing on human health, and they do not discuss sources and causes. And the complexity, there is, I mean, obviously a high degree of complexity that is the difficulty of what we are analyzing today. That includes transboundary, as before you have discussed, and there is very limited interdisciplinary analysis of the data. So while we already talk a lot about using existing data, maybe the question is to use existing data in an interdisciplinary approach. What we found that, for example, there is the transboundary provenance is in half of the knowledge is not specified, but in the one that is specified, it's very relevant. So half of the specified knowledge, and there is a high degree on human anthropogenic source. What are the other preliminary findings, as said, is the imbalance of the type of impact, and the key focus on the human health, but very limited on transportation from, I'm talking about scientific and not the news, and economic activity and the cost that, as I said before, it's really relevant when you go into searching for funding stream. Here you see, in fact, that most of the scientific literature is focusing on the health side, and very little it's on the other sectors. And obviously there is a high degree on the transport impact process. The unbalanced representation is very strong in geographical areas, and obviously the focus now that I'm presenting here is how the relevance in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. You can see how there is an increase, obviously, in the last 5 years on generation of scientific reference, with focus on West Asia and East Asia. But there is also a good contribution in Central Asia. From here, it's quite interesting to notice the impact and the source mentioned. So we see that in the top 10 countries cited for the impact and the source are somehow, the top 7 are somehow consistent. The other one are because they have internal impact and source, while others they have more transboundary effects. And in terms of highlights, this is obviously work in progress. So at the end of next month, we will have the final report. I leave the health because we already discussed, but there is a concept on obviously ecology and climate that it's important and very relevant. But there is in the economy sector instead there are very few evidence on cost estimation that for sure should be reinforced in future evidence generation. When we talk about news, instead, obviously the geographical reference is mainly Middle East, South Asia, East Asia. There are focusing on injured people, road accidents that we couldn't find in the scientific literature. Health is obviously always present. As of now, the 3 case studies that we will finalize by next month, we are working on are in obviously Mongolia desert and rangelands, Thar Desert, and Sahelian agropastoral, but there is obviously a strong potential to work in Middle East, in the Tigris-Euphrates plain, and in the different lake drying, including in Central Asia. There is the understanding that we have. I mean, it's obviously many-to-many relations, so impact and source, the flyover and entrainment effect that are very important, and the natural versus anthropogenic STS source. And the last that is very relevant for WOCAT is the lack of linkages with SLM, Sustainable Land Management, into the picture of this analysis. This is just the example in Iran that obviously help us to understand the human pressure and the impact generated locally that is then moving far away from the generation area. And based on what we have done so far, the idea or one of the final products of this quick study is to arrange a pilot projects with UNCCD and key countries where we work along the classification of criteria for STS source areas, the inventory of mitigating SLM practices, tools to support SLM planning, also with the spatial dimension and the scaling component at hotspot area, and a concrete set of practices that obviously are supported by training material. And as conclusion, obviously we said already about the complexity, so it's important that we are all aware about what we are discussing, and the lack of SLM in the picture, and the needs in the focusing on hotspot sources. As I said, the study will end in the next months, and in the finalization, we would appreciate maybe to have contacts from you attending and writing to us directly and to the team to contribute to the finalization of the product. I hope I stay in the 10 minutes. Thank you, and there are any questions?
Thank you so much, Enrico. Maybe, like, we are running short on time, but maybe we can accommodate only one quick question. If we have, yes, please go ahead. Can we have the mic, please? No, here, in the front.
One of your slides showed the source countries and the impact countries, and they were almost same. Are there no other impact countries?
No, what is important to notice here, I mean, I was a little bit fast, is that, yes, it's true that they are somehow the same, so as you see there, but the number of evidence change. So, for example, you see that in the West Africa, you see that there are several articles that are talking about impact, but when you compare with the source, you see that there is none. So this means that the article consider just one part of the subject and doesn't give a comprehensive picture. So this is the problem that maybe we have, that we need to ensure that we have an holistic and integrated picture when we present the data, so that then further research can be done crossing the information.
Thanks, Enrico. Moving on with our next presenter, Bakodir Kuziev from Uzbekistan, and he's going to talk about Human Security Trust Fund on the Aral Sea. Back here. You have slides?
This is not mine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, and host country member. I'm really happy to be here, and on behalf of my government, I would like to thank the government of India for organizing such a wonderful event, and all the organizers from the UNCCD for bringing us to here and sharing us our best practices and planning our future activity. My presentation will be about the new fund. This is a trust fund. Sorry, it's just now. While we fix the presentation, I'd like to mention that the previous presentation by the University of Chapel, it mentioned that our area actually in the hotspot of the SDC. And again, the presentation by before, it was mentioned that also there are studies about the impact of the SDC, but the studies are very limited. From my understanding, just few studies have been done which assessed the economic impact of the SDS, and they just calculated how much in terms of economic terms of impact has been done to the agriculture of Uzbekistan. So I think that there are large room to study other areas like what the impact to the infrastructure, impact to the health of the people in our area. As you know, in the past, our area was the crossroads of the Silk Road, and now I would like to say that it will become the crossroads for the research in the SDS and in other studies. As I mentioned, my presentation it's about a multi-partner human security trust fund. This is a very happily coincidence. Now here the coalition has been made by the donors, and this is the good platform for the donors. So I think this trust fund was created or established in very timely by the government of Uzbekistan. So as a commitments, at the high-level side event of the 73rd session of the UN, Mr. Antonio Guterres noted that when he visited Uzbekistan, he saw himself drying the Aral Sea, one of the largest ecological catastrophes of our time. On the government support that our president also mentioned that in UN General Assembly, that I would like to once again highlight one of the most agricultural problems of our time, the Aral Sea catastrophe. Overcoming the consequence of the drying up of the sea requires today an active consolidation of international efforts. So after this, the government took initiative and created the fund. The fund was established with the presidential decree in January 2019. The commitment was done by the government of Uzbekistan and by the Norway. Norway around 1 million and the government of Uzbekistan 6.5 million. And as for the progress, by the time we passed, we have already approved 4 projects in health sector and 3 projects in the water and food sector. As for the combating desertification and dealing with the SDGs, it comes in this water or food sector projects, with totaling now approved amount 1.4 million. Again, these are main basis of what was the fund was, the reason behind why the fund was established. It is to guide the UN and to list the priority directions on state programs, and then trust fund will assist the government of Uzbekistan in mobilizing resources and coordination of the international donor efforts. It will assist to carry out the framework of the trust fund unified strategy, which is based on the needs identified in the disaster most hit areas in Karakkal, Pakistan, through an independent socio-economic surveys conducted in the area by the Institute for Social Research in cooperation with UNDP in Uzbekistan. Here is the mission of the Trust Fund. This identification and rising the regional and international dialogue between the donors, mobilization and increasing funds under the integrated platform, introduction of effective project selections, ensure the transparency of financial transactions, and build the national capacity, and conduct the regular monitoring. As for the drought and the SDC, it's a serious issue for Uzbekistan. As I earlier mentioned, that a few studies have been conducted, and they assess that it impacted the loss of economic value of the harvest from 35 to 65%, depending on the years which was observed. And we have severe droughts in 2000 and 2001, and the most recent one in 2015, which affected the life of 600,000 people. Again, despite the many donor involvement in our area, the studies are limited only by the assessment of the economic loss. They didn't cover, let's say, health effect, infrastructure effect, and other effects to the economy and to the region. So, at the end, if you allow me, I will just show what are the actions done by the government of Uzbekistan in terms of prevention the negative effect of the SDS and drought. How can I play that? Just push. Oh. Can you just play the video, please? This is the recent activity initiated by the government. We planted the bottom of the RLC with we planted the bottom of the RLC with the local species of the trees like saksawul. In the last year, we covered 500,000 hectares, and this year also we are targeting 500,000 hectares. We think this is the kind of initial step by the government of Uzbekistan to stop the negative impact of SDS and drought. This is mainly the activities was conducted by the State Committee on Forestry. And in our case, the whole RLC is covered like an emergency zone. So here is a uniform of the emergency staff. So they are also involved in these activities. We have also pulled the volunteers also to this activity. Of course, the main planning was done by the State Committee in collaboration with the research institutes on forestry, and we have involved volunteers in planting these tree plants. These are the places for the people who were involved in the activities. Now we will be able to see the most of the activities. Thank you. It takes a long time to watch because without translation and it's there.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us those thoughts. Any comments, any questions from the